everyone, it's Kristi, and in this video I want to talk to you a little bit about the things that characterize some of the worst and stupidest comments that show up in my patriarchy video comment section, and give you a little bit about my perspective on them, and if you want to engage at all or how to handle them or how to interpret them, then I'm going to go through about 4 points of where that typify how people respond and why it's stupid, and then I'll sum it up by going over Thunderfoot's comments to my first video and explain how his comments have all of the hallmarks of error that I'm going to walk through in the first 4 stages here.
Yep, this is going to be fun. Stupid from Kristi Winters. Now, just a warning, I'm not going to play her entire video, I'm not going to respond to everything, just more stupider bits. Well, even she said we're going to delve into stupid, so let's do it.
The first characteristic that just indicates a person is dumb is they start a comment off with an insult, or that's all they do in their comments. They just write an insult directed at me, or something, how I look, or how I sound, or what I'm doing in my video. And if you start your comment with an insult, all it shows is that you have nothing intellectual to say.
If we're talking about your comments, I'd have to agree. But then again, whether you start off with an insult or not, you generally only have stupid shit to say anyway. But, to your point, don't be a fucking hypocrite. Otherwise, you're literally calling yourself dumb. You, on multiple occasions, in the past, in comment threads with me, have started comments insulting me. Whether it be you're insulting my intelligence, almost straight up calling me stupid, challenging my education level, which is the same thing, basically calling me an idiot. You've started comments calling me a liar because reasons, that's what you radical feminist social justice warriors do. You're a fucking hypocrite. And that aside, so someone starts a comment with an insult. That doesn't really mean that the rest of what they're saying is dumb. And if you hold that position, that means you're fucking arrogant. Now there's a big difference between saying, if you start off being disrespectful towards me, I'm not interested in the rest of what you got to say, compared to if you start off with an insult, I'm just going to assume everything you say is dumb. They're two completely different fucking things. One is fair enough, the other is you being fucking arrogant. And we all know you're a fucking arrogant cunt, so I'm not surprised.
You are signaling to me that literacy is wasted on you.
As I said, pot, meat, kettle.
Another thing that characterizes some of the comments on the patriarchy videos is whining about the definition of patriarchy I use. Now the reason why these people are whining about the definition is because in the videos where I present evidence that men overwhelmingly hold power, the definition of patriarchy fits.
No, you fucking moron. What you did was you designed a definition around what little evidence you had so that it appeared to fit. But you failed. As bad as just doing that is, you're too stupid to realize that yes, you did fail, because as so many people tried to point out to you, you grabbed your evidence and then made wild assumptions to come to a conclusion. That is not being scientific. You don't make a bunch of assumptions to get to the conclusion that you want. What you did is identical to practically every religious argument around. That's what everybody tried pointed out to you. Plus, there is no universally respected definition of patriarchy or whatever. It doesn't fucking exist. So, yeah, then people are going to complain about two things. One, you've got a definition of it, somebody else has got a definition of it. Hell, you're even making a series of different definitions of a patriarchy. How fucking intellectually dishonest can you get? Besides fucking stupid.
So the one thing that they'll do is they'll just say your definition of patriarchy is wrong, but then not provide a sourced, external, credible definition that is appropriate for the social world, that shows that my data somehow won't match that definition.
What you just said there is clear proof you have no understanding of how science actually works. Yet you call yourself a fucking scientist. You lying, arrogant piece of shit. I'll give you an example. A theist comes up to me and says God exists. I said, okay, define God. So they do. I turn around and say, your definition doesn't work. It's logically inconsistent. It violates the law of non-contradiction, etc., etc. It's then not my burden to give that person a definition that suits them. No, all I say is, your definition doesn't work. Go away, try again, and then come back. And this is what people are doing to you. You presented the evidence. People are dismissing it, giving their reasons why, and then basically saying to you, try again. That's how it fucking works. Although, you wouldn't know that because you're not a fucking scientist.
And they also just make up bullshit definitions on the fly that have no basis in reality. Now, it's not just patriarchy that I've seen people do this in the comment section. Another typical one is objecting to the concept of egalitarianism and saying, feminists think that egalitarianism is about equality of outcomes, not equality of opportunity. Like, well, that's bullshit.
Two words to destroy what you just said then. Affirmative action. Egalitarian doesn't promote that. Feminism does. That's equality of outcome. Dickhead.
Third, they often avoid dealing with the data that I put in the video at all. The Pew Center data, for instance, in the first one, nobody raised any objections that Pew is somehow a biased source or somehow the numbers counting up how many men and women in Congress and the Senate was not accurate. They can't win when they argue from the data. So a lot of times what they'll do is try to change the subject.
Are you trying to tell people that you really are that fucking dumb? Or you're just a fucking liar? One of the two, which one are you doing? People aren't dismissing your data, they're not challenging it, nor are they challenging the Pew Center, because the way you presented it, the data becomes irrelevant, and even where you get it from becomes irrelevant when the data doesn't lead you to the conclusions that you come to. You had to make assumptions after the data to explain why the data is the way it is to get to your conclusion. That's what people kept pointing out. Once you start making those assumptions to jump from data to conclusion, your data becomes irrelevant. You're too fucking dumb to understand that.
And the last sort of characteristic comment that I want to describe are the people who, the anti-feminists don't seem to have a consistent position. They either say patriarchy doesn't exist without demonstrating it in any meaningful way, without defining it and then looking at data. They just go, oh, it doesn't exist. Just like people who are creationists deny carbon dating is accurate. Just faith-based worldview kind of stuff. Or they'll say, well, if the patriarchy exists, then it's women's fault, because they haven't done anything to fix it yet. It's like, well, if you're admitting that patriarchy doesn't exist, then why are you running away from the data? Why aren't you presenting evidence to support your claims?
I know I've said it before in other videos, and no doubt I'll say it again. But you people wonder why oftentimes feminism is called a religion or a cult. That's why. What you just said there. What you just did is exactly the same as a theist walking up and saying, God exists. Prove me wrong. That's literally what you just said then. The patriarchy exists. Prove me wrong. And then you're claiming victory when people aren't doing that. That is straight out of the religious playbook. Well done, theist.
And if you do think it exists, but it's women's fault, if you're saying patriarchy exists and men hold power over women, how is it women's fault that they have not yet wrestled away power from men that men aren't giving up?
I personally wouldn't say that. I know others have. But what I have done in the past is just pointed out the fact that women have had the equality of opportunity for decades now. That's all you need to do, is just point that out.
Finally, I'm going to go over Thunderfoot's comments from my first video and point out the errors that he makes. He writes, I have an even better example of patriarchy, in quotes, where women are forbidden from competing with men. It's a global organization called the Olympics. For some reason, patriarchy has ensured that women cannot run as fast or jump as high as men. Must be cultural norms. After all, it can't be biological differences, because if it was biological differences, you would have to accept that brain function is part of biology. This is what I would call a non sequitur.
You would think that's a non sequitur, because anything that doesn't agree with your, I don't know how else to say it, but faith-based argument, you think is illogical. Just like a typical theist. What he did was he gave you an analogy where he deliberately left out other factors. But not only did he leave those factors out, he pointed out that he left out those factors to come to his conclusion, which is exactly what you did. That's what he was doing. He was showing you exactly what you did. But that doesn't fit your faith-based worldview, though, does it? So therefore it's illogical and then becomes a non sequitur. But in reality, it just means that you're a dishonest piece of shit. But, we all know that.
Let's break down what he does. He says, I have an even better example of patriarchy, without defining what he means by patriarchy. And he's not referencing my definition of patriarchy.
Again, he doesn't fucking have to. What he's doing is pointing out how your steps are flawed, how you made assumptions to get to your conclusion. And again, as I said earlier, just because we reject your definition doesn't mean we have to provide a counter. We just have to show why we reject your definition and say, sorry, try again.
What he's basically doing is moving the goalposts from the social world over to the physical world in order to establish that there are sex differences, which I agree, that they exist clearly, and that men and women have different advantages based on our sexual differences. But that doesn't have anything to do with what I was talking about in the video. It doesn't have anything to do with the data from the Pew Center. He's basically gone completely off course.
No, he's not going off course. He's showing you that you have missed steps in your scientific process by presenting you with possible evidence or reasons as to why the data says what it says, instead of you making assumptions to come to the conclusion you have. Because if you don't make those assumptions, you look at further evidence as to why, then your conclusion could very well be different. And you know that. You even just acknowledged that yes, that those differences he pointed out, you acknowledge they exist. To me, that proves that, at least in this argument anyway, you're not stupid. You're fucking lying. You're a dishonest cunt.
Because he can't win with the data that I've presented or the definition that I've been citing.
That would be the height of arrogance, right there.
In my response, I bring this up, and I'll just read what's here on the screen. I have to say, as you are a fellow scientist, I am disappointed at your deliberate misunderstanding of the theory, your misoperationalization of the key concepts into measures, and using the wrong data to test the influence of patriarchal norms on social power relations. You are misrepresenting the theory I presented. Why?
No, he's not. Rewind the video just a couple of minutes. Instead of me repeating myself, I've already said what he's actually doing. I swear it would be more progressive to bash my head up against a brick wall sometimes than actually try and converse with you progressives.
In his response to me, because he can't win on the facts and because he realizes he can't win on the definition of patriarchy that's accurate in the world, he instead turns to insult me. Because again, he doesn't have anything intellectual to offer on this topic. Actually, you're not a fellow scientist. Your publication record shows as much. You might reasonably claim to be a pseudoscientist, but you are certainly no scientist. So let's see how your non-scientific mind approaches this problem. It assumes differences in gender representation has nothing to do with biology when it clearly does. Even when an idiot-proof example of when biology plays a role is put in front of you, the Olympics, you just prove you can be a better class of idiot. Normally I wouldn't say something like this, but seeing as you spent the first 10 minutes or so waxing on about how clever you are, etc., only then to make a comically bad argument for patriarchy, maybe you should leave science to the scientists. He doesn't present an alternative definition of patriarchy from the one that I'm using.
He doesn't fucking have to. He's pointed out the flaws in your argument. That's all he has to fucking do. And he's also pointed out how you're not actually a scientist and you're not doing science properly. That's something that you can't fucking deal with. But bad luck, it's your fucking problem.
He doesn't explain why the data that I used in terms of political power as represented, operationalized in terms of men and women's participation in the US Congress since 1917 is invalid.
We both know that he actually did. And he even pointed that out in his second comment by saying that you are too fucking stupid to see it. If you don't think you're too stupid to see it, then you're being dishonest, because it was there. But we all know how fucking dishonest you are. I know firsthand you've been dishonest with me in numerous separate conversations.
So if you want to have a faith-based view of things and make up lies about what I said in my video...
Sargon's Law, anyone?
Because I never assumed that differences in gender representation had nothing to do with biology. That's a lie he made up.
He never said you did. In fact, he was pointing out that you were ignoring those as possibilities. So this is you lying. And I did just call Sargon's Law literally seconds ago.
And that's really sad to see, because as an academic, I think it's our job to model good behavior as to what it's like when we go to academic conferences.
Is this the model behavior you're talking about, Kristi? This is you referring to Thunderfoot, someone who has, the last time I checked, I think, somewhere around 100 or more published papers to his name, a so-called scientist. Is this the model behavior you're talking about? You fucking hypocrite.
Bye.